The College Baseball Experience Top 16 Revealing Show on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. You can win up to 100 times your entry with Underdog Fantasy Pick'em. Sign up with the promo code TCE SGPN to claim your special pick plus first-time deposit up to $250 in bonus cash. UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code TCE SGPN. And we're also brought to you by the Mega Memorial Day merch sale over on SGPN's merch store with the promo code SGPNMay. 15% off everything. And it is showtime once again here on the College Baseball Experience. My name is Noah Bieniek, aka 77. I'm joined by another special guest on the show, professional bracketologist for college basketball. But I mean, he's a pro at reading resumes. He'll be able to dissect everything for us. And I think he's definitely more qualified than I am to be talking about some of the hosting bubble situations that we have going on right now in college baseball. I'm joined by Rocco Miller, my good friend. Met him out in Las Vegas in March Madness. Rocco, Memorial Day weekend. First off, how you doing? How's the holiday been for you so far?
It's been pretty good. I've been taking it easy for the most part. Nothing too crazy this year. Taking on a little bit of this college baseball mania all week long. So I've had 5 different posts each morning. Out here in the West Coast, I'm getting up at 5 a.m. I think I can beat those Baseball America D1 baseball guys with their projections, but they must be not sleeping at all. I'm choosing to get a little bit of sleep. I'll save my sleepless nights for March Madness projections. But no, it's been a lot of fun. I'm really just enjoying ingraining myself in this process because baseball is so much different than basketball. The things and the factors they're looking at now, of course, them introducing the quad system. Is starting to show a little bit of similarities, but they run dry pretty quick, Noah, once you dive into the nitty gritty. So it's been great.
Yeah, and so you are lead analyst over there at Bracketeer.org, your website. You've been posting some bracketology updates for college baseball fans and just college sports fans in general to tune into every single day. Your latest one for Sunday, May 26th. The only thing I would say is, like, if there was a couple of upsets on the autos in the championship games here on Sunday, sorry,
Yeah.
you might not have some of those, but for the most part, you've got your 64 teams. And for the most part, I feel like the consensus is that we've got some pretty set in stone top 12 teams here. The bubble is where it gets a little interesting. Right now, you have Tennessee at 1, Kentucky at 2, Texas A&M at 3. You have North Carolina at 4, Arkansas at 5, Clemson at 6, Florida State at 7. Your 8th seed, you said, can get a little dicey between Florida State and Oklahoma at 7 and 8. At 9, you currently have Georgia. At 10, Virginia. At 11, Oklahoma State. 12, NC State. 13, UC Santa Barbara. And then here's where it probably gets a little bit dicey. For context, we're doing this a live show, 8:25 p.m. Eastern. The top 16, aka the hosts, will be released in 5 minutes here on the Twitter page of NCAA Baseball, all in alphabetical order. So they're not going to give us the seeding. However, Rocco, walk us through kind of your read on the NCAA tournament hosting bubble, the top 16 seeds here.
Yeah, no, I like the way you laid it out, Noah. I think those 13 should feel really good about their hosting chances. All of them are ranked in the top 15 of the old traditional RPI. And a lot of years before this year, the only difference this year is for seeding. They are supposed to look more at the KPI. They don't have to. It's just the KPI ranking is listed on the team sheet. So it's up to each individual committee member on how far they want to go into the nitty gritty on their team comparisons. I think some of these are pretty easy, like those top 8. You can see Arkansas fell short in the SEC tournament. They fell short in the SEC standings late by losing a series to Texas A&M. So if you're going to have anybody 4th in that top 4, they're 4th. So some of the stuff you don't have to go that deep to figure out your answer. But I think when you get down to these last few hosting spots, and I think you got it right here with the 14, 15, and 16 spot, This morning I had Indiana State in the 14 hole. 15, I elevated Mississippi State from a 2 seed into a host spot. And I think if you're going to put Mississippi State into a host spot, I have a hard time seeing them being all the way down at 16 because, it's sort of like in basketball, once you're selected into a particular place in the bracket, like in this case, you're a 1 seed, then you're seeding them like once again, 1 through 16. Mississippi State's got so much strength and power and danger. I would be a little surprised if they landed 16. They could land as high as 14 and vault Indiana State even. So I've got Mississippi State there. 16 quad 1 wins, 4th most in the country. Of course, they've won a good amount of series. They finished really strong. They have 19 SEC wins officially, but 20 if you count the midweek win over Ole Miss. Just a lot going for them on the positive side. The cons are they're all the way down to 25 currently in the RPI, and 5 quad 4 losses is a little heavy on the bad losses end of things. And then 16th, I have Duke as we speak. Duke, of course, making me look smart today by winning the ACC championship over Florida State, another strong win. And if the committee was waiting for that game to end before they finished these host selections, that only would have helped Duke further because Duke's now in the top 16 officially, which I know over the years has been kind of a rule of thumb for the committee. Do you check that box? Duke does check that box as we speak.
Yeah, and we were talking about it a little bit pre-show. The only reason why you would expect Duke to not be a host, in your opinion, they've earned it on the field. It would be facilities-wise if the Blue Devils do not receive a host here, correct?
Yeah, and I think that kind of blindsided me in the last few hours. I remember it coming up. It came up a couple of years back, and I know Duke hosted 1 year. I think it was 2022, right?
Yes.
And they got through that. I think in that case they were just too darn good to ignore.
They hosted it at a different facility though, so they didn't. Right? So this year they applied to host at their home ballpark, Jack Coombs. In past years they've been denied because of it, but
they play at the Durham Bulls facilities where they did the 2022. Is that right?
Correct. I think so, if I remember correctly.
Which is a beautiful ballpark, by the way.
Yeah.
That was I got a little blindsided. I was really just looking at so ingrained in all the baseball data that I forgot about these nuances here in baseball. But if Duke gets denied, I would imagine it's only due to that. Everything they've done on the field, they belong as a host. All right. And I think the other teams to look out for closely. So I think just general update since last night, East Carolina gets knocked out before even making the championship game. That, of course, opened up a second bid, which will factor into our bubble conversation at some point. But East Carolina fell all the way to 23 last night. They're 22 as we speak. Their AD is on the committee. So I think East Carolina is still being discussed or all the way up until their discussions ended. But for all intents and purposes, they're out for me on the hosting talk. And then Dallas Baptist goes ahead and wins the Conference USA tournament, getting a win over Louisiana Tech, which propelled them up to 17th because that is a great win on top of their already good work they had done. They're now 9-2 against quad 1, Noah. So Dallas Baptist is a team to watch closely as the announcements start here in just a moment. And then I also think San Diego, even though I don't think they'll get in, they're in the discussion at 19. Most years that would get them a lot of attention. They just got buried as like the 4th or 5th highest mid-major. It's unfortunate because in most years, like I said, they would probably get looked at a little closer. And then the last team is certainly Oregon State. They're probably not the last team. I'm just going in my own little order here. Oregon State has been projected as a host for most of the process. A very viable selection if they do not select Duke. So as they go alphabetical, look out for Corvallis, look out for Durham, and look out for Dallas. I think are the key ones early.
Yeah, so right away, Athens Regional alphabetical order, first one that's been announced. Then we got the Bryan College Station Regional, Texas A&M hosting, expected to be a top 8 seed there. Third one, Chapel Hill, right here with North Carolina.
You're excited about Chapel Hill, though.
My allergies have been bothering me the entire week. Charlottesville has been the 4th announcement here.
Okay. So we're coming up on Corvallis potentially.
Yep. As we approach COR, that would be the giveaway that Oregon State sneaks in or is left out of the hosting scenario here. Clemson as the 5th regional host here. The 6th one, Corvallis.
They get it. Okay.
Refreshing the page. We have one West Coast host in
Okay,
the Oregon State Beavers.
Yeah, so that's either going to be bad news for Duke or bad news for Mississippi State. There's probably not a scenario where both will host now.
Fayetteville is the next host here. Arkansas they're pretty much cemented in as a top 8 seed here. I am just going through and retweeting most of these. Oh, baby. Did you get that across your timeline? I heard a gasp.
No, I'm just listening to you. It's better this way. Did you get Greenville?
Greenville.
Yeah.
East Carolina.
I was going to say we skipped over Dallas and Durham. So both Dallas Baptist and Duke have been locked out. And that, of course, leaves room for Greenville. Makes you kind of wonder if the host sites were determined maybe before their loss yesterday. I don't know. I don't know when
they've been prone to do that. They have.
Yeah, because that does happen in basketball quite a bit.
Yeah. So Greenville hosting East Carolina. You are a regional host, top 16 seed.
That's a little crazy.
The next one.
Yeah.
So I'm refreshing this, and sometimes Greenville's appearing, sometimes it's not. Like you said, hopefully that's not the case. But yeah, Greenville's back. Knoxville was the next announcement, along with Lexington as well. We're getting tweets from Kendall Rogers of D1 Baseball saying Greenville as a mild surprise being a top 16 host. Norman, Oklahoma is the next host here that we see in the announcements.
I think there's no room for Mississippi State as long as Indiana State gets announced. But we'll hear Santa Barbara first, then we would hear potentially Starkville. But I don't think we're going to hear Starkville just based on how I see this playing out.
Rally for NC State. They play really well down the stretch. They earn a top 16 seed. Santa Barbara is hosting. That's the 2nd West Coast regional that we see here. The Gauchos earn
25-0 at home. So good luck winning a game out there.
Stillwater is the next host. That's been announced.
And so no Starkville.
Starkville.
Yep.
Oh, they're going to have some Hail State fans in their mentions tonight.
Yeah, I heard a lot from those guys throughout the week. It's been a fun week.
Very, very passionate fan base. They'll make their thoughts known. Tallahassee is the next announcement here, as this refresh didn't even load.
Yeah.
So Tallahassee gets the nod. Florida State. The interesting part is we don't know if they're top 8 or not. That was the one that kind of looked like they had played their way into that scenario throughout the week here. And then Tucson, Arizona.
Wow. So no Indiana State. Wow.
No Indiana State.
Yeah, they skipped Terre Haute.
Arizona sweeps the Pac-12, the regular season title and conference tournament title, earning themselves a host bid. Rocco, so I can tell you this.
We got 3 in the West now.
Yeah, I can tell you this. I don't think the committee waited, or I would say I don't think they did this early. I think they waited for some conference tournament results to see that Arizona come across. And also Arizona, being 31 in RPI.
Yeah.
Where were they at KPI? Do you know off the top of your head? I don't
have that in front of me currently. 30. They were 30th as of 6 a.m. today. It has not refreshed. Yeah, if you go to Factor right now, it has not refreshed since 6 a.m. So I'm assuming that's what everybody went off of for these decisions.
Holy smokes. I am very surprised at Tucson, honestly, with the RPI.
That's good, though.
There. I love that.
It means our friend over at the athletic director at Utah did his job representing the Pac-12 in its last year, getting Arizona won the championship and the tournament championship. I wrote about them a little bit this morning, how a little unprecedented if a team that was able to do that in the Pac-12, not only not host, but usually they're a top 8. But of course the league was way down, and I think the committee did a nice job on Arizona's case to to look past the strength of schedule, because some of the teams in the league got so bad in the RPI, Washington themselves plus Washington State, a couple other teams at the bottom, that it would actually hurt your RPI to play against your own league, which is kind of crazy to say about a power league.
Yeah. As a Big Ten baseball fan, it's been recent for us in the last couple of years. So we have all 16 regionals have been announced.
Yeah.
Going through one more time alphabetically: Athens, College Station, Chapel Hill, Charlottesville, Clemson, Corvallis, Fayetteville, Greenville, Knoxville, Lexington, Norman, Raleigh, Santa Barbara, Stillwater, Tallahassee, and the final one was Tucson. Honestly, I was caught a little bit off guard by both East Carolina and Arizona. You said that the Utah AD on the committee did his job. I think East Carolina's AD on the committee did his job to get the Pirates in here. A couple of the snubs that were notable, Mississippi State, Duke,
Indiana State.
So
yeah, and
all,
that's the
all
other
14, 15, and 16. I hate to put you on the spot, but all 14, 15, and 16 right at the end of your projection there all get snubbed.
Yeah, and that's pretty interesting because the fact of the matter is, you when we started the show, you laid out the top 13, Noah. And then we cut it off, and we had that part right. It was just
Correct.
We need to swap 3 new teams into the 14, 15, and 16 spots. We'll see tomorrow exactly what order everybody's in, but I'm pretty sure those 3 surprises are going to be your 14, 15, 16. So between Oregon State, Arizona, and East Carolina, and we'll see how that shakes out. But
so who do you think would be 14, like in order, of the Oregon? I think personally, I would have Arizona because they won both titles over Oregon State.
I agree.
Oregon State 15, and then East Carolina 16. I think
I'm with you on that. With you on that because you could put East Carolina 15, and of course, John Gilbert is on the committee from East Carolina, so maybe he want to get them away from Tennessee, assuming Tennessee is going to be our 1 seed. So whoever's stuck with that 16 spot has to probably deal with Knoxville in 2 weeks. So maybe John worked hard to get them up to 15, but yeah, I think Arizona at 14 makes all the sense in the world. They were the only one of the 3 to win 2 titles. And if we're going off titles, East Carolina, of course, got the regular season at least. Oregon State went 0 for 2 on both Pac-12 opportunities. So, yeah, I'm okay with 15, 16 going either direction.
All right, so I'm doing the honors, filling in on the work doc that we are displaying currently on YouTube, the top 16 seeds that were just announced, and we also went Arizona at 14, Oregon State at 15, and if East Carolina is not at 16, I think the AD deserves a raise.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
I promise we've got over 440 people tuned in both on Twitter and YouTube. I will get to displaying some comments, but currently filling in Rocco's top 16 from this morning in the seeding order, minus the back half snubs that were catching us off guard a little bit today. So 3 seed Texas A&M, 4 seed North Carolina, 5th seed was Arkansas, 6th seed was Clemson, 7th was Oklahoma's 8. Florida State was 7. Oklahoma's 8.
Mm-hmm. Then we'll go Georgia and Virginia.
Georgia, Virginia,
Oklahoma State, NC State, and the Gauchos.
NC State and UC Santa Barbara. Any nervousness around the Gauchos possibly falling behind like an Arizona or Oklahoma State?
Yeah, maybe, but I feel like they're on such a tear, and in the Big West, talk about like RPI killers. When you play half the league, you're getting killed on your RPI. So I think based on Santa Barbara's ability, like I think in the non-conference they flew cross country and played a series against like Campbell, and they went out and showed the committee they were not only worthy of being a host and playing a national schedule, but also like winning such a high percentage of their games. Whereas Arizona was, a lot of the year they were either in first, second, or third. I think the first time they were really in first place for like more than a few days was after that Utah series when they played really well against Utah, and then they kind of took off from there. But Arizona had scary moments throughout the entire journey on both the regular season and the tournament. Now they achieved two incredible feats, but they were not dominant by any means. And even last night's game, they're down 3-0 in the seventh inning. Got a pretty not miraculous, just a solid comeback once they chased USC's ace out of the game. Nothing against Arizona, but I do think Santa Barbara is kind of the more dominant team. What do you think?
Yeah, personally, I think UC Santa Barbara is going to be more of a threat to come out of their home regional than just Arizona.
Right.
And I don't mean that as a knock on Arizona. I've said this on the show a lot. I really like that coaching staff over there. Chip Hill has really made a lot of improvements, especially on the pitching side, which has been what they've lacked in recent years. But, the offense has carried them recently. But this season, it's been a little bit different where the pitching is phenomenal and the offense is not up to par with a lot of the other hosts. UC Santa Barbara, performed pretty well in a really good Big West this season. Again, my
it's that time of year.
Yeah, exactly. And it's storming. I forgot to say that at the beginning of the show.
Ooh.
If I randomly lose power, I just want to put that out there in the beginning of this. But UC Santa Barbara, they've looked phenomenal ever since their early season stumbles. And that's what I think is being held on Mississippi State really hard right now is they fell a lot early in non-conference. You look at UC Santa Barbara, 2 losses and a series loss to Campbell. They also lost early to Sac State. They lost a game at Pepperdine. They lost to Cal Poly in an early season series. Cal Poly was a really good team to finish out, but that first month and a half for UC Santa Barbara was not great. They've been on an absolute tear to finish. So just like Mississippi State, I feel like all the Hail State fans are going to appear in some East Carolina tweets today and tomorrow. But I think they have a case to say, hey, we just had the same kind of season outlook as UC Santa Barbara. They're a mid-major champ. We finished 5th in the SEC with 20 SEC wins. There's a little bit of an argument there. I don't think they can argue their way over Arizona. Personally, I think Oregon State probably has the edge over Mississippi State. So,
one other thought on those last decisions for 14 through 16.
Shoot.
At the top of the board, 1 through 12, you see 5 of the teams are coming from the SEC, 5 from the ACC. So one of the things I kind of chewed on for a long time the last day or two was, if I gave Duke that last spot, but not Mississippi State in there, then all of a sudden I'm saying the ACC deserves 6 hosts to SEC's 5. by putting both Arizona and Oregon State in with East Carolina, they avoid all of that and they keep them both at 5 each. So that way they keep them equal. So that's another kind of whole controversy they were able to avoid by doing it this way.
Interesting. And yeah, Sultan of Swat, a Mississippi State fan in the comments section right now. He's like, NCAA just leaving a stadium out that regularly fills 15,000 fans on the bench when they were right there on the bubble is a shame. But I mean, you got to take into account the entire season of work and the entire body of work. And I can understand why Mississippi State was left out. And I think I give kudos to the NCAA and, propping up Arizona for both regular season titles.
Yeah, I like the Arizona pick. I do think both Duke and Mississippi State probably, especially after what happened with East Carolina, were more deserving. But I can live with that. I think also the other benefit is to getting the surprise 3 hosts on the West Coast. We were looking at a scenario right before the announcements came out where there might only be 1 West Coast host. It makes the tournament a little bit more of a national experience. I know in years past they've only had 1 host out here in the West Coast, and it makes it really difficult for kind of like the whole country to get involved. And I was curious if the NCAA still cared about that or not. I think this shows they do. We saw a scenario where we talked about it last time, Noah, 2 tournaments ago. 4 of the 8 Omaha teams were SEC teams with Texas and Oklahoma both there as well. So basically 6 SEC teams in the for
Yeah.
for our future of the sport.
Yeah.
So trying to make sure
And then Stanford, who's an ACC team.
just trying to make sure these additional leagues and programs have the opportunity to host this event, can boost those programs up, can help those leagues so much versus just giving the ACC and SEC a sixth host. So I don't know if that ever came up in the room or not, but big picture, I think that's a win for the sport.
Yeah, and one last addition onto that last comment. Shout out to Oregon State. I mean, this last year was your last year in the Power Conference. This was probably your best argument to be a host, depending on how well they can schedule in the coming years as an independent. So, Oregon State, you have a golden opportunity to prove some people wrong that doubted you being a host. I think they were right there on that. On the inside of the bubble, and I think they were worthy of hosting. But if there were any doubters out there, they have a great golden opportunity right now. Let's fill in from the back. The automatic qualifiers. We had 12 decided today. I'll run through all of them real quick. Before we do that, though, I need to talk to you guys about first off, the SGPN Mega Memorial Day merch sale is going on right now. 15% off everything in the merch store with the promo code SGPN May. And also, Underdog Fantasy wants to make NBA playoffs a lot more exciting for all of you guys. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. Playing their pick'em game is as simple as selecting higher or lower on player stats like points, rebounds, assists, and so much more. Make entries of all basketball or mix and match across your other favorite sports. You can win up to 100 times your money, and it's a ton of fun. Underdog is available in 30-plus states, including California, Texas, and even Canada. Underdog is available. They also just launched their Champions Player versus Player format in Florida. They're legal for fantasy drafting in Michigan now. Sign up with the promo code TCE SGPN to claim your special pick plus first-time deposit up to $250 in bonus cash. UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code TCE SGPN. All right. The auto bids that were decided today, or actually, I'll just run through all of them real quick in case some are unaware. In the ACC, Duke won that championship today over Florida State. Bryant emerges from the America East. Tulane knocks off Wichita State, who had beaten East Carolina twice this weekend. So Tulane gets the auto bid in the American. VCU wins the A-10 after St. Louis falls early in that tournament. Stetson wins the A-Sun. They hosted that one, so shout out to the Hatters, but probably were the favorite to emerge there. Oklahoma State wins the Big 12 Saturday night. St. John's comes out of the Big East. That was really on the fringe, the bubble for NCAA tournament. So that possibly was a bid stealer, possibly wasn't. In the Big South, High Point making their first ever NCAA tournament appearance. The Big Ten, Nebraska wins a 2-1, slugfest in Omaha and Charles Schwab Field. Their crowd was amazing once again. UC Santa Barbara comes out of the Big West. They win the regular season, no conference tournament there in that conference. In the Coastal, the CAA, UNC Wilmington knocked off Charleston in the championship game. Charleston won the regular season. They're on the tournament bubble currently. Dallas Baptist comes out of the Conference USA. They win the tournament over Louisiana Tech, who is hosting that tournament. So impressive win there. Northern Kentucky comes out of the Horizon League. First year in, I think, 5 years that Wright State does not emerge from this conference. So shout out to the Norse. Penn wins the Ivy League. Niagara comes out of the MAAC. Western Michigan advances out of the MAC. Evansville. Yes, it was. Bowling Green kind of ran away with that regular season. Evansville knocks off Indiana State in the tournament final. Fresno State coming out of the Mountain West as they emerged from the losers bracket, lost their first game, win every single one after. Long Island out of the NEC. Southeast Missouri State out of the Ohio Valley. Arizona, like we said, they swept the Pac-12. The Army Black Knights win the Patriot League once again. Tennessee wins. They sweep the SEC, actually. Wofford comes out of the SoCon. They were in the losers bracket as well in that one. They played like 6 games and ended up winning that tournament. Nicholls State wins the Southland. Out of the SWAC, Grambling State Oral Roberts, last year's Cinderella story, this year a nightmare regular season, but they turn it on late and they win the Summit League tournament in the Sun Belt. Southern Miss once again, 8th season in a row, 40 wins during this campaign. Incredible for Coach Oz in his first year with the Golden Eagles. San Diego comes out of the West Coast, unfortunately did not get a regional host, so they'll be one of the top 2 seeds here. And lastly, some controversy here. Rocco, why don't you go ahead? So I'm aware, and you might have a better explanation for some people, but I think this is a terrible rule. Tarleton State wins the WAC. Grand Canyon gets the auto bid because they win the regular season. Can you explain the transition rule for those that are not aware?
Yeah, I mean, the premise has always been, and this has gone on for decades and decades, so well before our time, where you transition into Division I, and this is for all sports. It's not a baseball specific rule. You have a 4-year transition period because I guess at some point in history, I don't know if it was in the 70s or 60s or beyond, there would be teams that might come up to D1 for a year or two and then go back down. So to show that they were committed, because especially in these days, in these times, you have such a big financial commitment to go from Division II to Division I. And St. Thomas out of Minnesota, we saw recently become the first team to go from Division III all the way up to Division I. But again, they had an abnormal amount of resources for that level and made it work for D1. So the reason they have that 4-year rule is basically to show that they're committed to playing D1, and it's a probationary period to make sure they don't leave D1 during those 4 years. So that's the way it's always been. It still hasn't changed, of course. I know it's frustrating because, you know, they've basically made it okay to participate in postseason events, which is great. Extra chance to get a banner up on your outfield wall. But yeah, I mean, what Tarleton decided to do today to petition, it's been done 100 times and everybody's 0 for 100 doing that. So it's not going anywhere. I think the bigger subject is, at least for me, maybe not for the larger masses, but for me, the question is why did the WAC decide if this happened, we just give it to the regular season champion? I'm not saying it's the right or wrong decision. It just made a lot of the games played in this tournament virtually meaningless. Made the whole tournament meaningless, actually, because if they would have just gave it to the finalists. So in the Ohio Valley, Southern Indiana started pretty hot. They got to the winners bracket finals. They had the same scenario. They're also a transition team out of Evansville, Indiana. And I talked to their league officials throughout the week, and I was told it would just go to whoever they play in the championship game. So it gave all those other teams a reason to keep fighting. Obviously, you want to win the championship, but in Tarleton's case, whoever came through the losers bracket ended up being CBU. They had to beat Tarleton twice, and they beat them once and fell the second time. So yeah, I thought that was kind of frustrating. I mean, nothing against Grand Canyon; they had a good regular season, but they bowed out.
They ran away with that.
But they played
title in the regular season too.
They did, and they'll be a tough out next week. It's just more about, you know, they came to Mesa, Arizona this weekend, or not. They didn't even make it to the weekend. They lost to like the 7 seed RGV in the losers bracket. They didn't have a good week. And if you're anybody else in a one bid league that does what Grand Canyon did, would not have any life, and they now have life. So I find that all very fascinating.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's you explained it great. Some points that I personally didn't even know about teams bouncing in and out of D1. So the rule makes them, you know, like kind of in the probation period, they're going to want to stay in D1 after. So that, I mean, we've seen it over and over. Like Liberty was a team, correct?
Bellarmine in basketball was a big one because they won their tournament, and they were actually just trying to appeal to make it, instead of a 4-year probationary, make it a 2-year. And it's all been shut down so far. But I think you know, there's more and more momentum getting behind it. I can tell over the last few years, but it still hasn't. The dam hasn't broken on that part of college sports.
Yeah, and I mean, what you take NCAA to the courtroom, and what's happened recently? Like, who knows?
Right.
So as you were explaining some of that rule, I've kind of ordered the back half in the 4 seed line based off of RPI. If you have any kind of arguments, one team over the other against this ranking, you can go ahead. But for me, when I'm doing bracketology, I'm the order of the 4 seeds in strength is only really for location purposes. And even so, like we typically you're giving the nod to the team that's closest to the regional, correct? So
Yeah, in most cases, I would say so. There's a couple that are a little strong that will be towards the top of your list here, probably the last couple that you do. But yeah, beyond those teams, I really don't have any issue with just putting them in the most logical geographical location.
Yeah. So let's jump in. So we are in a little bit of a pinch in case you do need to get out of here. Let's talk about the tournament bubble.
Yeah.
Because I mean, this is dinner time. You're out there on the West Coast. It's 5:57, about to be 6:00 p.m. for you. Let's talk about the NCAA tournament bubble. Like you said just now, you said it's tough. On your most recent update on bracketeer.org, your bubble that you stated: Florida, Kansas State, Indiana, Coastal Carolina, TCU, James Madison, Charleston, Northeastern, Georgia Tech, and Cal all have pretty good blurbs that you wrote out this morning here on the bubble. Those were 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 teams here on the bubble. For how many spots, Rocco? And which teams do you think kind of have some advantages over others?
I believe that was for 6 spots because it was in order. The order was done intentionally to put the teams in first. So those first 6 I had in today, and then those last 4 being Georgia Tech, Charleston, Northeastern, and Cal out. And we could talk about it. So the first 4 I purposely put in that order based on the fact that the chairman of the committee is from Coastal Carolina. We know that. We have the Florida athletic director as a brand new member, just appointed to the committee in the last 2 months, but he was there for all the meetings this year and he was the one SEC representative. Obviously, failed on his first job, not getting Mississippi State a host. So you can take that out on him, Bulldog fans. And then you have Kansas State, who a team that I kind of don't necessarily like. I like both the CAA teams better, honestly. But I think with his influence on the committee, that's really hard to predict against them not getting in. And we have the same thing at Indiana. Now, I'm a little more comfortable with Indiana because Penn State lost today. I feel like the Big Ten committed big time to being great, a lot greater in baseball the last couple of years, and that showed up on the field. Nebraska and Illinois are really the only 2 that are for sure getting in, but I think a third team is warranted. Indiana's RPI is down in the low 50s, but they've won some good series. They've played a hard schedule. It's usually acceptable to get your RPI in that number if you're a northern half the United States team. So I feel good regardless of the fact that Indiana's AD's on the committee. I think that only helps, but they're the clear third team from that league. So I just want to call out the fact that we have 4 teams with ADs on the committee that are all on the bubble. Like, I've never seen anything like this. So I think.
And how many years have you been covering college basketball bracketology wise?
More than 2 decades. Yeah. And really getting to the granular level of committee members and studying them, definitely over a decade. And again, I don't want to play like any kind of conspiracy theory type things with that.
We're just trying to get it right?
You're just trying to get it right. And I think what ends up happening, I mean, I've served on enough mock committees as well, where when you're together in person, and of course the voting rules, when your team's brought up in the room, you have to leave the room. So if they're talking about Kansas State's AD has to leave the room. So that, that is what it is. And we've known that. But I think what ends up happening is you kind of start to like the people around you. You're going and getting lunch together. You're up late together for like 4 straight nights talking about these teams all the time. So it ends up being a camaraderie based process. And, it's like, hey, I just hung out with Noah for 4 days. Do I really want to piss him off and leave Michigan out? Like,
Yeah.
So it's almost like a subconscious level of, effect on people. And now this dynamic, I mean, I'm so fascinated by the dynamic of 4 ADs with 4 bubble teams, because what happens if like 3 of them get in and 1 doesn't?
I mean, now you got a conversation between 7 committee members rather than how many, like they're all leaving at the same time.
It's crazy. So anyway, I just got to the point where I think these teams are close enough. Like Kansas State's probably the only one I'm passionate about, probably don't belong in. Because then it's like, what does it do to TCU? They're from the same league. TCU's RPI is 39. Usually that's safe, but they have losing records in quad 1 and quad 2. They had a losing conference record. I just feel like if you really wanted to tap into TCU, you could have a lot of reasons to leave them out as well. So the Kansas State AD is going to be tasked with fighting for TCU because he can't talk about his own team. So I think all of that's pretty interesting. And then with James Madison, I think they've done enough to get in as the Sun Belt's 4th. I think the Sun Belt deserves at least 4. 4 is probably the right number. Troy played themselves out of it. Georgia Southern made an incredible run this week. And of course, heartbreaker in the 9th inning today. But James Madison, I think, is the clear 4 and finds like one of those last spots. So that's how I landed with those 6. But it's really tough because I think both Charleston and Northeastern have a really good case to be selected. And it was also hard because I thought the Pac-12 deserved a 4th team, which is why, California even lower than like an Indiana down in the 60s, but they played really well throughout the week, lost a tough one to Arizona in the semifinals. So it just makes me wonder what this field might look like if these 4 people weren't on the committee.
Yeah, so that's an interesting point on Kansas State specifically, because last year they probably had an argument to get into the field and they were left out. I went and looked 2023 committee. I found a committee as of August 10th, 2023. I don't know if this is the group that selected the field, but Kansas State's AD must be new.
He is.
Okay, so
he got assigned at the same time as the Florida AD Scott Strickland. So yeah,
gotcha.
They were the 2 new guys, but he's the Big 12 guy. So I'm not sure who was there, but last year wasn't the scenario. Oklahoma was like 11 spots below them and got picked over them. Was that the team?
Yes, Oklahoma and Kansas State, I think, had a series win over Oklahoma.
That's what it was.
But it was like the Oklahoma, they probably had a little bit of a, favorable nudge because they were the national runner-up the prior year. So,
and the thing is TCU beat Kansas State, I think, 3 out of 4 times because they played them this week in the tournament as well. So that was my hard thing to do, is put both of them in, because I knew that was going to cost both the CAA candidates their spots.
Yeah.
Assuming that Florida's the other really tough one. There's a big part of me that doesn't want to put them in. I think if I was in the room, I would not vote for them, because 28 and 27 with a million chances to win against good teams. I know they hit the lucky 13, which is 13 SEC wins usually get you in.
I don't know about usually. I think it's only like 39%. But
is that what it is?
Yeah, it's just, it gets you a really good argument, I would say. And they didn't do anything to help their cause in Hoover, and they have a ton of non-conference losses that they suffered early in the year. So like, I don't know how I feel about Florida either. That's going to be a really tricky conversation for who's the head this year to explain. The Coastal Carolina AD. So
Coastal,
you'll have to explain that.
Last year. Yeah, they'll have their talking points ready. I mean, they've got the great KPI. I think they're like 21. But the funny thing is the KPI loves the SEC so much that if you look at the 11 projected teams to get in, Florida's still 11th there. So, again, if you're grading on a curve, I mean, that's the way I'm looking at it. Just try to simplify it a little bit more. You're going to take – we understand the SEC is dominant, and with the transfer portal, all teams that play in the league are loaded with talent. They're getting best players from the next leagues down to come up each year now. So I get that. But at a certain point, the NCAA tournament is meant for more than just putting your top 20 teams in from the power ratings. You should have some level of success to earn your spot. And to me, like 28 and 27 is not really successful unless you like won your conference tournament. So
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
yeah.
And it's tough because I do consider myself a Florida fan, and I've recused myself. I think that's the term from the situation.
Well
Like,
said. Well said.
just no input. Honestly, like if it happens, if it happens. If
Yeah.
not, it doesn't. I don't think I see this team as like an Ole Miss of 2022, where they get into a really good groove and they make a run. Personally, I'd probably find a way to pick against them in the NCAA tournament. So I've listed here the last couple of autos in the order that I think I would have them in. Do you have any input, any suggestions on changes with these last 7 autos? So we would have 4 getting into the 3 seed line, and then the last 3 would be 4 seeds.
Okay, so starting with 64 up. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how picky you want to get about it, but I think Oral Roberts is probably a little more dangerous than Long Island and Grambling just because they returned some players from the College World Series last year. I know that their ranking might be the lowest just because they had a funky year, but they're starting to play better. And I don't think Oral Roberts Tennessee would be very fair to Tennessee. But yeah, you could put them with like an Arkansas or like a Texas A&M probably, and that would be fair. But yeah, besides that, would go up a little bit higher. Mostly looks good to me. Nothing really stands out big time. I know Niagara had a real nice RPI.
Yeah, they have a couple of non-conference wins against high-powered teams. One of them was Michigan State. Yeah.
Okay. And then I honestly haven't dove into Stetson because I had Kennesaw penciled in all week long. And I like that Kennesaw team, but Stetson will be a good representation as well. There's like a 4-way tie at the top of the A-Sun this year. So
it was a really fun conference to follow the entire season long. And I love that conference tournament because they separate the 8 teams into 2 pools. Top 4 teams are all the best top 4 RPI teams. And then the bottom 4, they have to play in like an Omaha style 4-team pool. The winner advances into the semifinals, and it's a single elimination from there. And cool. Stetson, they defended home field. So that's what happens.
Yeah, they have a great program historically, so it's no surprise to me. I do think I don't know if the ones on the in column K there are in order.
I kind of put them in order just after quick glances on our good buddy Warren Nolan. But go ahead and offer any input.
Yeah, I'd say St. John's is certainly the most deserving, regardless of ranking. They won the 4th best league, at least that tournament, and played themselves into like a bubble team level resume throughout the week. And then I would also say Evansville. I definitely like them more than Tulane and VCU. You could debate me on Nichols. I like Nichols a lot too. So yes, Evansville just up maybe 2 spots.
Okay. Tulane.
Tulane's dangerous too. Yep.
Yeah. They what was the reason
they swept ECU?
They did at their home series. I was looking at Warren Nolan. I was looking at what did I put them over? I think I went with quad 1 and quad 2 wins that Tulane has accumulated compared to Evansville, and that's what I gave them the nudge over both VCU and Evansville for. But
I'm good with that. I think Evansville over VCU though.
Okay.
I think I'm pretty clear on that one. They just don't have anybody in their league like the Sycamores, and Evansville beat them with everything on the line. So
yeah, and then Nichols was another one that you kind of mentioned as a team that you like. They just didn't have the opportunities, correct?
They did. Well, they did, and they didn't win any. But because they played in them, their RPI skyrocketed to 61 right now. But if you look at quad 1 and 2, they're 1-11.
Yeah.
So they had 11 chances, they had 12 chances. They only won once. If you look at Evansville in that category, They're at least 4-10.
And Tulane's got a bunch of Q1, Q2 wins too.
Yeah. So I like maybe go Tulane, Evansville, Nichols, or Tulane, Nichols, Evansville. I think
let's do.
I'll take a look at the KPI too while you're doing that.
Oh yeah, thank you.
I think Tulane was definitely higher than both. I looked at it not too long ago.
Tulane playing, and sweeping East Carolina 3 times, that probably helps the KPI a lot.
Absolutely.
Because Nichols just doesn't get that opportunity in their league. Lamar was probably the highest.
Was it Nichols
in their conference?
Yeah, Tulane's at 92. What we got? Oh, Evansville's at 100. And Nichols at 98. they're all bunched together. And even Grand Canyon's in the middle of that at 94.
Do you like where Grand Canyon's currently at? Like you sounded pretty strong against them.
Yeah, I put them last.
Okay. All right. So that's what we got there to end off the 3 line. And so going back to the bubble, you said you liked, Indiana, James Madison, TCU, Florida, Kansas State, Coastal Carolina is probably a little bit further up on the bubble there.
Yeah, mainly because I'm not messing with them. I just, this is the craziest part about it. And maybe I didn't fully contextualize it, but I think the craziest part about it is the fact that if the committee was totally different and I was not thinking about the committee and I was just looking at the numbers, you could easily argue Florida, Kansas State, and Coastal does not belong in over Georgia Tech, Charleston, Northeastern, or California. The fact of the matter is all 3 of them have strong committee representation, and it's really difficult to pick against it when the margins are this thin. And I don't know how I'm going to change my mind about that before tomorrow morning.
So. I want to put one team on your radar, and I've already mentioned them once, but I think they should be deserving of just being in conversation on this bubble talk, is Lamar. They've got 4 Q1 and Q2 wins. They swept the Big 12 champion in their own home ballpark. Lamar currently 65th in RPI. I don't have KPI in front of me. But I think the thing that probably is going to knock them is the 257 non-conference strength of schedule, and the 10 Q3 Q4 losses isn't terrible when you look at some of the other teams on the bubble. But when you're 65 in RPI, that's just going to be something that probably gets brought up to leave you off. But I think Lamar is good enough to be in this conversation. 44-15 overall. I mean, that's better than 28-27 for Florida.
Right. Yeah, I think the problem for them is, 29 of their 44 wins came in quad 4. Yeah. So they really had 15 meaningful wins, but even 11 of those were quad 3. So, all 3 of their quad 1 wins were the Oklahoma series. That's great. But from a committee standpoint, you want to see a bigger variety. You want extra evidence across several teams as much as you can get. And they've just kind of got, they could just maybe chalk that up to like a matchup thing, or, they got hot one week, or, that type of rationale. I'm not saying they are. And I agree. Lamar should be discussed. I also think Troy should be discussed. They had a great year. If Portland could have beat San Diego once, maybe they would have been discussed too. But yeah, I think we've got the bubble pretty down good, unless you think there's somebody else. To me, Cincinnati had a great Big 12 year, but based on their performance this week, I don't think they did enough. Falling into the 60s in that league when there's other options in the 30s is really, really tough to sell.
One last statement I might want to get out of you before we move on is ACC fans are probably not liking us right now after not bringing up really Georgia Tech or Louisville in this conversation. Louisville drops to 60.
Tech belongs. Yeah.
Louisville drops to 60 in RPI. You had mentioned Georgia Tech probably is not going to get the edge over some people with strong committee representation. Georgia Tech 15-15 ACC, only 1 quad 4 loss, 5 Q3 losses. They were 6-5 in Q3, and they've got 10 quad 1 wins. They've got 14 quad 1 and quad 2 wins. Overall 14-17 in quad 1 and quad 2. The non-con strength of schedule at 202 is something to note. I don't have KPI in front of me, but I'm sure it favors Georgia Tech a little bit more than 49. But they're on the outside looking in as another team that
I
is
really
probably going to be a
feel.
little unlucky, right?
I think Georgia Tech's right there. Like I've liked them throughout the process. This week was obviously unfortunate going 0-2. I think even 1-1 would have made all the difference for them.
Both Georgia Tech and Louisville 0-2.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that really hurt both. And I think Louisville had a little more work to do than G Tech.
yeah,
I think that strength of schedule thing is really important too, because I think in a traditional year without all this committee like factor happening, you typically can either just go straight off RPI or you can just look at non-conference strength of schedule for the bubble. Who got in, who didn't, and that's actually really helping the teams that I have in right now. You got James Madison at 5, Florida at 2, TCU's in the 80s, Kansas State's in the 70s. Who else am I missing? Coastal's number 3. So, and then the other thing going for Coastal, even if you totally dismiss the committee part, is for whatever reason the KPI is absolutely in love with the Teal Chickens. They've got
Pluckers.
they've got them 19th, and I'm saying it's weird because they didn't win the league, they didn't win the conference tournament. They finished they were the 7th seed in the conference tournament. Their league champion Louisiana is all the way at 35. So all those non-conference games that Coastal played really, the KPI liked that a lot.
Yeah, I'm currently filling in some last 4 in, first 4 out. But we've got a good portion of the 3 line filled up just from our conversations that we've gone over. And let's jump into some 2 seeds. I went with so Indiana State, Mississippi State, Duke, Dallas Baptist, kind of just looking at Warren Nolan as you were talking. Plus, I think Indiana State, Mississippi State, Duke is kind of how you had it 14, 15, 16 coming into prior to the announcements. So, and then DBU 20 was kind of on the back half of the top 16 consideration. So I think I have your agreement there. I agree with you, I should say, with how you have that ordered. I'm going to go through some of the other autos and just make sure we have them off to the side. Don't leave them out. And go ahead.
I also think this part of the process, if you're really doing a true seed list, which you are here, this is kind of where I think the KPI can be a little bit more impactful. So in their order, it would go Mississippi State, then Wake Forest at 10 and 12 in their rankings.
Over Duke, who had the ACC tourney title?
No, I think I would keep Duke, but I think Wake's got to be probably
over DBU.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And again, when you do the regions, it should all sort itself out anyway.
Yeah.
But just in the same ballpark is fine. And then I think from there, LSU is probably next at 14.
They really played themselves up the ladder for sure this week.
Right. And I'm glad they did, because I think, from a draw standpoint, if you and I called all 16 head coaches of the host schools and we asked them which 2 seed do you not want to see?
Yeah.
LSU would probably be at the tip of a lot of their tongues.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how teams should be seated, because, you earn that right to make, if you're a top 5 or a top 6, you've earned that right to hopefully not get set up with a bad draw. So I like that they played themselves up. Vanderbilt's next at 17. I'll try not to make it all SEC, but it kind of is.
This is KPI you're talking, right?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and skip. I'll skip to Nebraska because they did win the Big Ten tournament, and they're at 20, and we'll also do Southern Miss because they won Sun Belt tournament. And then I think we can circle back and grab South Carolina after that. Unless you want to do UC Irvine, I'll let you decide.
So UC Irvine over, say, South Carolina you're talking about?
I'm sorry. We got to I think we got to throw San Diego in probably either before LSU or right after LSU.
Okay. So let's go with after
The
LSU.
The KPI just does not like San Diego. They're in the 40s for some reason.
The WCC wasn't strong this year.
Yeah.
They had Portland outplay some expectations, but Gonzaga wasn't
horrible.
Yeah.
St. Mary's had a pretty good conference year, at least.
Yes, and the thing about Gonzaga is they always schedule well. This year they just didn't win any of those games, and it was rough. And then this was Vanderbilt.
This is Vanderbilt. Mm-hmm.
All right. So Irvine or South Carolina?
Yeah, I mean, if you go to the RPI, it's South Carolina, and the KPI South Carolina. Irvine dropped a game this week. Was it Northridge? So I imagine you put South Carolina first in that order.
Yeah, I don't really see too much jumping off the page in favor of UC Irvine. I mean, South Carolina, of course, they're going to have all the opportunities in the world. They have 15 quad one wins. UC Irvine's 4-1 in quad one. But again, like out west is like the really big kicker here is they don't have a ton of opportunities to schedule well, but the non-conference strength of schedule is not great at 122.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you didn't have a ton of opportunities, but also you didn't schedule to have opportunities. So yeah, I think I agree with you. I'd have South Carolina over Irvine.
Yeah. We have 3 West Coast hosts now too, so we'll see if they can squeeze in somewhere.
Because also, I don't think I made this point earlier during the top 16, the heat of it when it was all coming out. But like in years past, we've had like East Coast teams playing till midnight. You won't have that now because you can schedule it properly. So that's really cool. That's good.
We'll see. We'll see. I wouldn't count on that too much. Yeah.
Weather, Mother Nature might have an impact on that.
It always hits a couple regions. There's no doubt.
So I mean, Louisiana Tech, I don't think should fall past the 2 line, right?
Yeah, I think both Louisianas are in there somewhere. Up to you what order you want it. The KPI likes see this here. Louisiana by 4 spots. They're 35 and La Tech's 39 as of 6 a.m. today.
So
then West Virginia maybe gets in there with Texas. That's what I had, but you can let me know if you like that. Wilmington's got a shot. I kind of like throwing them in the comparison.
So Wilmington with 12-10 quad 1 and quad 2 record, and they did schedule well at 50. La Tech 12-10 in quad 1 and quad 2 with a 56 non-conference strength of schedule there.
With the Cajuns,
Louisiana a little bit further down the list, so they're 12-10 with 8-4, and then they also have the Sun Belt regular season. Louisiana Tech has the Conference USA regular season, but I think I would go Louisiana over La Tech there, and then it would be between UNCW, Texas, West Virginia for the last 2 spots in the 2 line for me.
I like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in some order, they're clustered in that area, so I'm good with that.
I like your question that you always would like to phrase, like, which is the team that you would not want to see as a 3 seed in your regional? Like, which one of these teams slips down? The answer would be Texas, but to me, I find the 8Q4 losses hard to reward over somebody like UNCW who did schedule well. They have a winning record in their top contests this season, and West Virginia, who has a pretty clean resume overall, but didn't schedule well.
Yeah, I mean, the hard part is if KPI is used for seeding, Texas is way up there at 24. They're clearly in the 2 seed range. Yeah. West Virginia is in there too at 31, so they're solid. And then with Wilmington, and I agree, Wilmington's probably more deserving, winning a great league down in this tournament, but they're all the way down at 50.
Yeah.
So it really just depends on how they want to slice that. I think in some cases you could make a you can make a region that's in that 13 through 16 seed range strong with Texas.
Yeah.
And you could soften up
a
I
one
don't want to
seed
say
Texas
yeah.
or like where's Texas A&M this year? 3.
Yeah, Texas A&M's 3, so they'll probably be paired with them if they land here at the bottom of the 2s. If you
Yeah.
throw Wilmington in the bottom of the 2s, they're probably going to like Tennessee or North Carolina themselves. So either way, I'm comfortable with both scenarios.
Yeah, I think you bring up the point of KPI probably having a little bit more of a say this season, and it's going. My biggest issue is I don't know how they're going to weight KPI yet this year, and I'm sure you're thinking
Right.
also the same thing.
Yeah, I think one thing I've noticed too with like, and again, these people are different than, and the process is different than basketball. But when basketball started adding different rankings to the team sheets, so there's 5 now, and in baseball we just have a couple. But
yeah,
what a lot of committee members tend to do, whether they say it or not, or is a different subject. But sometimes you just blend the two numbers. So, like if Texas is 24 KPI, 47 RPI, then they're like a 35 and a half, right?
Yeah.
And if you have Wilmington 34 here, 50 there, then they are they're a 42. So,
I won't lie, that's a really convenient way to do it.
It's a convenient way to do it. Doesn't mean it's right. For all we know, it could be like 3/4 RPI still and 1/4 KPI. Like we don't know how the pie is built, but
yeah,
and again, at the end of the day, it's just however many people it is. I think there's 10 on the committee that are sitting around voting for teams, right? So even when you're in the room, you don't know how the vote's going to go. It's like watching a close election. You don't know how it's going to go. Every vote matters. So it's sometimes just hard to predict, and you'll surprise yourself even as a participant in it.
Yeah. So we've got 5 teams, I think, left. TCU, Alabama, UCF, Illinois, Oregon. I have written down here. And we kind of already discussed.
Well, you already have TCU in.
Oh,
at 42. So I think you're missing.
Is UConn a little bit further up on the bubble, or is they're out? Or are they?
No, I think UConn's pretty clearly in.
Okay, so that's the team that I'm missing.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was the team that I was going to mention as a little bit alarming that I didn't have in already.
Well, do you want to put? I would say out of those 5, the most risque, even though they're getting in, is Alabama, just because they.
Yeah, these are in no order. I don't think.
So. I put Alabama at 38, just based on their, they struggled down the stretch. They got the 13 wins, but didn't do much after that. I would say on the stronger side, I feel very confident that Illinois and Oregon, probably in that order. Illinois had a dominant regular season in the league, deserve to be, whatever gift you can give them.
And then UConn would probably be after them if we're rewarding regular season performance, and then UCF. And
there you go.
All righty. So we've got the 1 through 64 there. I just filled in the top 16 1 seeds. Pretty easy, just like what we were talking about. Texas, one of the weaker 2 seeds, probably going to one of the top 1 seeds, and it also just creates that dream matchup of Texas A&M, Texas in a regional. Indiana State, I mean, we've got Kentucky. I think we've sent them to Arkansas earlier when we were talking 3 weeks ago. Indiana State,
I think so.
Also, I mean, logistically, it's kind of tough to fit them into one of, unless you send them out west.
Yeah, I mean, Indiana State. It's funny because this morning I put Oregon State at Indiana State. We could do the opposite at
Okay.
this point. But I think for the West, I would just prioritize San Diego based on the fact that they won both their championships. They're in the top 20 RPI. The interesting thing is Arizona's hosting, so maybe that's the move. Santa Barbara technically is a little closer, but I don't think the committee tends to put two mid-majors together as the top two seeds. They usually need one power team. So I think San Diego with Arizona makes sense to me.
Okay.
And then I don't know how you want to attack it. I usually like to attack it from the top teams first, and then we can fill in the bottom ones after.
That's how I typically do it too.
Yeah.
I only did Texas because it was kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But
I think we're gonna have to. We're either gonna have to put Duke or Vanderbilt with, Duke or Wake with East Carolina. I'm kind of leaning towards Wake there personally. And again, the committee has come out and said they've made mistakes before where they don't like the teams to be together year after year. And I know East Carolina and Duke were together just recently, so
yeah,
I'll give it to Wake due to that.
okay. Mississippi State's probably going into one of the Carolinas, I would say too.
NC State, yep. That's where I had them like 2 days ago. But they're that's going to be the best path for them to not have to travel as far and win the sucker.
Is Stillwater the closer Oklahoma? Yeah, they're the closer Oklahoma to DBU, correct? Or is it Norman?
Correct, but I've been putting them in Oklahoma because they went to Stillwater last year.
Yeah.
The other option would be to put them in one of the West, but we can hold tight on that until we
Do they have a shot to go at Fayetteville, or is there a 2 seed that's probably a better fit at Fayetteville?
Well, I just think
Nebraska.
they would. I think
that
Oklahoma's
would be fun.
Right.
Dave Van Horn, the coach of Arkansas, prior he coached at Nebraska.
That's right. But Nebraska went to Fayetteville last year too, so that's been avoiding that one as well.
Gotcha. It's just such a fun matchup to create.
I started studying like all the last couple brackets to make sure I don't do duplicates. I hope the committee follows my lead on that because it is boring to see the same regionals, play themselves out in recent tournaments. LSU, I think we need to address. They could actually go to Santa Barbara, or Oklahoma State. I think are the two choices there.
I would say so. We've filled in. So UC Irvine probably has to go to Oregon State, correct?
Yeah, they can't go to Santa Barbara.
No.
So yeah, you probably want to just put them there for at least temporarily.
Yeah, because that would be my only thing holding back LSU to Oregon State. So then LSU is probably a better fit at Oklahoma State, right?
Yeah, they sent LSU there before to Corvallis, and they also sent the Beavers to LSU last year. So I'm preventing that one this year.
No, actually, that's correct. I mean, LSU's been to Oregon State in recent years too, so that's also a good point.
Right. So then you're left with either Duke to Santa Barbara, which doesn't really fit that well, or you could just send Nebraska there, which isn't something.
It's not terrible. Yeah. I could see that happening.
Or we haven't used Indiana State yet either.
No, one of the Louisianas or Indiana's. I wouldn't even say So Indiana State could be a candidate to go out west because one of the Louisianas is going to go to Arkansas.
I think if that happens, I just don't. I think you need a power team with Santa Barbara, and Nebraska would qualify there.
Okay.
But I also, I think that's going to have to be the move because we don't want them in Arkansas either.
Yeah, so, and the UC Irvine already being a West Coast team, higher ranked, I think they would have priority to go Oregon State, which would only leave Barbara. So, Indiana State keeps trickling down. One of these teams is not going to be happy.
Well, Virginia would make some sense because they're further north than the rest. So I think for now we go with Virginia. We could send them to Arkansas, but that would be a little too harsh.
Yeah, I think the Cajuns or the Bulldogs are bound for Fayetteville.
The only other
Right.
option would be to send Indiana State to Oregon State, which I'll look at that later. But this is fine for now.
Yeah.
And then, so that now we need to find Duke a home. I think Georgia's fine. They
West
did go.
Virginia is a good fit at Tennessee. I just kind of skipped down to the back, right?
Oh, you can do that. Yeah, we can do that.
They're a good fit at Tennessee or Kentucky.
Yeah, I would avoid Kentucky because they were there last year.
Good point. And yeah, Kentucky's going to be another headache with the Country Music Fest Railbird. So West Virginia already dealt with that last year. They don't need to do it again.
Yeah, and then I think, save the Louisianas for the end because they're not going to go anywhere that friendly. But South Carolina is a key one to assign. And I think you just put them with Clemson, keep them in their state.
Yeah.
That'll be fun for everybody.
Yeah, and that earlier this season, that series wasn't fulfilled.
Okay.
So they only played 2 games. Clemson swept them there, but South Carolina didn't get one home game. So they played the one neutral and then the one game at Clemson, and they didn't fulfill it. So that there's been some anticipation building up in that between those 2 schools for sure.
That is so fun. I like that. I think, for the Arkansas one, you either go Louisiana Tech or Southern Miss.
So
probably Louisiana Tech. Yeah.
So we've only got 2 more candidates for Vanderbilt, North Carolina and Florida State. I think North Carolina is probably the better fit.
Yeah, you got to do them there. Good call there. I think I'd like to swap them lower. You could swap them with Nebraska, but that would be
no, that would make sense. I think we normally see some SEC teams sent out west to mid majors. So
yeah, I think I'm going to save Alabama for one of those in the 3 seed spot because they haven't been sent west at this point. They probably due for that this year.
Vandy's used to being sent west too. They've done it before. I think they went to Oregon State in 22.
Yep. Okay, so we're doing well here. Southern Miss to Florida State makes sense to me.
Okay. And
then Duke to Georgia.
Yeah.
They've done that before, but it's been a couple of years at least, so that's fine. And that leaves the Louisianas, right? So I put La Tech at Arkansas just because La Tech is much further north.
Yeah.
And then Kentucky's going to be stuck with the Cajuns.
That's fun. Stuck with that's going to be a high flying regional. These teams love to run. 3 seeds now. UNC Wilmington being one of the top ones. Illinois also going to have regional priority. Illinois to Kentucky. I don't know why I said that. That was
they're too good. Completely. Yeah, we saved Kentucky for
Kentucky just got screwed. That was completely
one of those,
dumb statement.
That's all right. Just keep it. We'll save that for like a Wofford type. But yeah. I think
Wilmington, the East Carolina fits, right?
I like the NC State one actually because they've only got 2 powers, so that gives them a nice mid-major to mix with the 2 power teams.
Okay.
I save East Carolina in case we decide to put one of the SECs there. Florida could end up there, for example. And then I think, go to Illinois, Oregon. So Oregon makes tons of sense at Santa Barbara. We need a Pac-12 team there. Illinois can either do Oklahoma State with LSU. I think that's a good fit. Or the Oklahoma.
You want to balance Oklahoma with a mid-major in there, make it 2 high majors because Oklahoma State and LSU is already kind of.
Yeah, we could do that unless we want to put Alabama there. So I don't want to really decide yet.
Sure.
I could also put Alabama and Florida. Alabama can go to a lot of these. So I'm going to save them. But let's save Illinois too because they fit a lot of places.
They do.
Okay, let's just go ahead and do the obvious thing now and do UCF to Florida State. That's just kind of been a no-brainer. I don't think they've even played there before for a regional.
Really? That's actually surprising.
Maybe they have. I just don't know how many tournaments UCF's actually been to.
True.
I don't remember many.
Hard to get an auto bid when East Carolina's in your conference for a decade.
Yeah, for sure. And before Dante Culpepper, nobody even knew what UCF was. So, all right. So UConn and I'm just grabbing batches of teams here.
Yeah.
And Coastal,
Indiana, UConn, Coastal. There's a ton of Carolina teams here. Which one do we want to balance out?
I kind of like putting Coastal in the Clemson one. Let's keep it all South Carolina.
Wow. That regional's crazy offensive.
Mm-hmm. And then I was thinking, okay, so UConn.
James Madison, the Virginia, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But there's already a mid-major there, so I don't know. Would you do that?
Indiana State's recognized as like a top team, so that helps. But maybe UConn at Virginia could be better. Yeah, I think both are fine, honestly. Because Sunbelt's like a top, what is it, the 5th best league?
Yeah.
So that's almost like a Power 5 in this sport.
Yeah. I mean, technically, like you said, Indiana State, just outside of the top 16, is probably one of the strongest twos. Going a little bit further down in the 3 isn't such a bad idea, but it's still recognized as a top 5 conference.
Okay. That's good stuff. Yeah, and with 3 West hosts, we might actually have to send UConn to Oregon State.
Yeah, they've been sent out west before too.
Right. I went to the Super Regional when they played Stanford, but that was obviously a different round.
Yeah.
But it was a fun event. Good baseball.
So
TCU could also come west. They were with Arizona last year, so I was trying to avoid that. They can't do the Oklahomas, of course. Or you could put TCU with Arkansas as well, especially if they're one of the last teams in.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going off of like recent trends, last year TCU was in Arkansas.
Oh, that's right. That's right. They won it. Yeah. Why don't we put TCU at Oregon State and move? Okay. We could move UConn around for now.
Yeah, I mean, UConn's. They can kind of get sent anywhere at this point. There's not really a northeastern host, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. And then let's do.
Is St. John's a fit at Kentucky? Just attacking Northeast, and Kentucky and Virginia are.
Kentucky's the furthest
Northeast teams.
You could plug them in for now. I think it's a little bit harsh on St. John's, but they might be stuck there.
Yeah.
I mean, Illinois is a good fit for Kentucky too, depending on who.
It also gives you the 2 high majors as well. But I mean, then you would send St. John's to either Tennessee. Didn't we fill Virginia with St. James Madison? Sunbelt's a better conference than the Big East.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Why don't we do Illinois to Oklahoma State for now?
Okay.
They've been a little bit more deserving throughout the year. Alabama, this is a fun one.
Like you said, they really could go
anywhere.
Yeah.
Anywhere.
I mean, the Oklahomas.
Let's work on Indy. Let's work on. So Indiana, like you can put in a lot of places in the middle. Yeah. They're a nice fit at Arkansas. Why don't we do? Oh, actually, they just went there too.
Did they?
I think so. Yeah, I checked that.
I don't think Arkansas would complain about seeing Indiana either.
We could do Indiana with. We'll have to remove the Illinois there in Kentucky. Oh, Indiana just went to Kentucky, but they went to Arkansas before that. So those are their last 2 appearances.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh, Oklahoma.
Yeah, you want to do Indiana and Oklahoma for now?
Yeah, why not?
It's a nice mix. Got to decide. Florida's lower on our pecking order, and then there's Kansas State's another Midwest team. So why don't we do Kansas State to Arizona, or Kansas State to Arkansas? You can decide. Arkansas might be a little better, actually.
Yeah, I'll send them to Arkansas there.
Mm-hmm. That's much closer.
Yeah.
And then we can decide if we want to send Florida or Alabama to Arizona.
I think they would Florida is the bigger brand, and you could say like they would be a little bit scared. But I think seeing Florida in your regionals not as scary as seeing Alabama, for what it's worth.
Okay. Well, we send one of them. Like, I think it makes more sense to send Florida up to East Carolina.
Does it? They're further down the 3 line, right?
Right, but geographically, I'm just thinking on the map. And then you shoot Alabama over to Arizona. Because neither can go to Georgia.
Nope.
And then what does that leave us with? Is that all the at-larges? Then we start going to autos after that?
I think so. Wofford's a good fit at Georgia.
They're close, yeah. Where does it cut off here? At 48, right? So we have Wofford, Tulane, and Evansville, and that will fill it?
Yep. Evansville, another Indiana team. So, like,
well, we're short one
Tennessee,
team.
We are short one.
Do we have St. John's in?
I filled them in early, but I think I took them out. So St. John's
North Carolina.
I mean, they're gonna get a bad draw at this point. Like, they're either going to Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina. That kind of makes sense because I don't think Virginia and James Madison, I think, are probably going to be a package deal. I mean, that's pretty close.
I think so too. I agree with that.
So St. John's is kind of an unlucky team here.
I kind of like Evansville to Kentucky. It's on the Kentucky border. I've been to a basketball game at Evansville. So I know it's close.
Illinois to Tennessee.
Yeah,
St. John's, North Carolina. And then the team left out right now is Tulane. So Tulane goes to Texas A&M.
Yeah, that's perfect. They're closest.
That works a lot actually.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, puzzle pieces when they fit, it's like, oh wow.
The only one I'm not enthused about is St. John's.
Yeah, to North Carolina.
Only because they're with Vandy. Well, I just know and this is probably just me being picky, and the committee would probably never catch this, but I remember when St. John's went 2 years in a row and they accidentally put them with Vanderbilt both times. So where's UConn at? Am I missing? Are we missing
UConn?
Do we put somebody in twice?
Oh boy.
Because I was thinking if we flipped them with UConn, that would probably solve it. But do we even have them? We have 2 Illinois. That's why.
We do.
So we need UConn, and I guess we'll do St. John's to Tennessee and UConn to North Carolina.
Yeah.
That work?
Or do you want to flip it with St. John's winning the tournament and UConn going 2 in barbecue? Does that matter?
I was just preferring to keep St. John's away from Vanderbilt because St. John's fans, all 3 of them might be upset about playing Vanderbilt again.
Alrighty. So Nicholls State down there in the boot. It's tough because Texas A&M was the only team down there, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. So I don't think they would go to A&M.
No,
you got to bounce, right?
Yeah, I got to get rolling. But this was awesome.
Thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, looking forward to the show tomorrow. See how close we get to the pin. But I think we did a fantastic job. Just no bias there. Just we thought through everything at a deep detail. And
they'll come at me for including Florida, but I appreciate you, doing the talking for me.
We have our reasons. Noah and I are agreeing that we would not vote Florida in ourselves, but we are also agreeing that we think the committee will. And this is our best representation of what you're going to see tomorrow at noon Eastern time.
Yep. Thank you a lot, Rocco. I enjoyed you coming on here last minute, but I really appreciate it. Go ahead, plug your website. You're going to have another version of this projection out there tomorrow morning, correct?
Correct. Yeah, I'll probably wake up a little earlier, get ahead of the show. It starts early where I live, so
9 a.m. for you.
9 a.m. Yeah, I love it. Get it done and move on with the holiday.
Yeah.
But yeah, bracketeer.org, just like it sounds, bracket EER.org. Outside of this big event going on tomorrow, doing a ton behind the scenes for college hoops scheduling. If you love college hoops, stay in touch with me throughout the year. Do live coverage of games throughout the year before doing all this forecasting work for next year's March Madness. And of course, come next May, we'll dive back into this stuff. So it's the best place to find my work. And then on Twitter, I'm at Rocco Miller 8. And usually just talking hoops 99% of the time, but every once in a while you get something fun like this. So thank you, everybody, for joining. This has been a great experience for me. So thanks, Noah.
Thank you for your time, Rocco. Have a good night.
You too. Thank you.
Alrighty, so I'm going to jump in here and finish the 4 lines and finish kind of the regional projection, beginning with Nicholls State. I had already kind of mentioned there's not really an obvious fit for Nicholls. They're probably going to be sent out west to one of these Western teams, but we'll hold on to the Colonels there. VCU going into Virginia, I would say. Keeping that regional in the Commonwealth. Grand Canyon going to Arizona. Next up is Stetson. They'll probably end up in Florida State. Niagara, another Northeastern team. We'll hold on to them based on kind of what's happened. Same with Bryant, who's next. Western Michigan probably gets sent to somewhere similar as Indiana State, Indiana, Illinois. Let's go with let's hold on to them. They're probably a little bit too high based on regionals. These northern schools here, Tennessee, Kentucky, North Carolina, just from my opinion, they're going to get stuck with some really good teams from the north that just have no logistical obvious answer. High Point down there in the Carolinas. I mean, East Carolina is a candidate. NC State's a candidate. Clemson's a candidate. But I think High Point being one of their higher ranked teams on that 4 line, we'll just send them to East Carolina. Army, another one of those Northeastern teams. Southeast Missouri State, that's kind of an easier fit for one of the Oklahomas or Arkansas. So let's go SEMO to Oklahoma State. Northern Kentucky, that's an easy fit in the state of Kentucky. Just send them to the Wildcats there. Penn, another Northeastern team, will skip for a little bit. Fresno in Cali. So Oregon State or Santa Barbara. Let's go Santa Barbara there. Oral, they're going to go to one of the Oklahomas. Let's send them to Oklahoma State because Oral was just at Oklahoma. Let's send Oral Roberts to Oklahoma. Oral Roberts was at Oklahoma State last year. Long Island, another Northeastern team, Grambling down there in the Bible Belt area. Let's send Grambling to. None of them were an obvious Georgia candidate. So we'll go Grambling to Georgia. They've got the same logo, just different colors. That's fun. So back to Nicholls. They'll kind of just fit in one of the Western regionals, like I said. So they'll head out to Oregon State. Then we have Niagara. We'll slot them in to one of the northernmost regionals. That would be Tennessee. Niagara to Tennessee. Or do we go with North Carolina? Like I said, Tennessee, North Carolina is going to end up with strong regionals just by the habit of their location. I think Niagara is a better fit. In Knoxville, Bryant to North Carolina. Western Michigan will head over to they're going to probably interrupt one of these Carolina all Carolina regions minus Mississippi State here. I'll hold on to Western Michigan one more pass through. Penn being another one of those Northeastern schools. Penn's probably going to end up at NC State, Fresno, Oral, Long Island, the last Northeastern school here. They'll go to Arkansas. We've seen NJIT head out to Arkansas before. So Western Michigan, and who's the other team that we skipped over? Was that the last? There's two teams here that we're missing on filling in here. Army doesn't have a home, right? Army is above Penn, so Penn and Long Island. So Army's probably the better fit at NC State. Penn is going to, I mean, Penn at Texas A&M makes a ton of sense. A&M keeps digging into the Ivy League, and I think they've got who's the kid that's already committed. So yeah, Penn to A&M, Western Michigan to Clemson, which gives Bakich a great chance to pick apart that roster in the transfer portal too. And that is our regional projection here for the final day. And like I said, Rocco Miller does great work over there at the Bracketeer. He's going to have his own version with a couple of slight location changes, of course, and maybe a couple of changes on the 2 to 3 seed bubble line that we were talking about, and 3 to 4 with sounded like he had Tulane a little bit lower than me, and Nichols a little bit higher, so he could have Nichols as a 3 seed when it's all set and done tomorrow morning. So bracketeer.com, BRACKETEER.org. Sorry, not .com, bracketeer.org. And follow him on Twitter at Rocco Miller 8. Follow me on Twitter at NoahB77_. I will be live here once again tomorrow. I'm going to try to go live around like 11:45, 11:50 a.m. That way I've got 15 minutes to talk about, this bracketology projection in the morning, and also, enjoy the selection show. And I am going to have some company. I haven't solidified on who it's going to be yet. I have an idea, but the invite hasn't been extended for whatever reason on my part. So I'm just always procrastinating. But if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But it's going to be more of an instant reaction pod. And then in about 4 hours after that, I will begin all 16 regional previews, 10 to 15 minutes long. We're going a little bit more in depth into some of these teams' makeups compared to what I typically do when I'm handicapping games and what I will be doing during the regionals. So thank you all for tuning in. You've been experiencing the better side of college baseball with the College Baseball Experience. Adios, amigos.